This is serious business. This Senate ought to be ashamed. I don't know how the other senators can sit in there and watch this. I don't understand it. This is childlike, and there are real consequences.
Like costing the state millions of dollars.
Are we having fun yet? The man of the hour, South Carolina Treasurer Curtis Loftis, the man a Senate panel has been wanting to hear from for weeks now. They got their chance on Thursday, a roughly 4-hour hearing into that $1.8 billion mystery money fandango that we've been engaged in here for better than a year now. We are going to connect you to the Capitol because it is Sunday in South Carolina. So our friends Catherine Glenn Foster and Dave Wilson are here to do that. We have talked this subject to death, but every time there's a hearing, there's something else to talk about. Almost 4 hours. The treasurer was not on a camping trip this week, as he was a week ago
when he was supposed to be there last time.
When he was supposed to be there last time and sent his deputy in charge, and she too faced questioning for a number of hours. He was grilled today, but for the most part, it was loud.
Right.
It was accusations, and it was trying to define what certain words mean in the finance world. Let's take it away.
So there is a difference between an account and a fund. And if you don't understand the difference between those two, think about it like this. You go to your check register, you take a look and you go, this is how much money my account says that I have. The question then becomes one of, okay, how much money is actually in there? Now, for you at home, you're sitting here, you pull up the app on your phone, and you go, well, I've got this much money in my account. But imagine this. Imagine that it is money that shows up in the account, but there's no cash behind it. That, Brian, is the big difference between those two things. And there's so many different accounts that are out there. So the question is, are the funds there to back up the account? And when they did a transfer of one system to another, there was this money that seemed to be there, so they set it aside.
1.8 billion that seemed to be there.
And so it seemed to be there, and they acted like it was there, but they acted like it was there for years. And that's where all of this is kind of broken down, because the Comptroller General, who is the person who writes the checks for the state and is supposed to keep up with the accounts, went and said, here's what we have in accounts, and the treasurer said, well, okay, well, you say we have this in the accounts, and this is what we have in funds.
That's what we have.
That's where the breakdown is, and the Senate is really, really ticked off about
Yes,
this.
and that was the crux of much of the debate on Thursday during that Senate panel hearing, where a year ago, we know, it's in the record, the treasurer said, the money's there, we've invested it, it's accrued X amount of dollars in terms, millions and millions of dollars of interest. So now they're holding his feet to the fire saying, you said that under oath. That makes you a liar because the money wasn't there. So that is what led to all of this.
Exactly. It reminds me of one time I was making a payment on one of my credit cards, okay? And so the money was in my bank account, was ready to go. I make the payment to the credit card, and there's a lag because they were with two different banks. And so for a period of time, it looked like I had a lot of money left in my bank account, even though it was already spoken for. It was really gone. It wasn't there. For me, it was pretty easy. I didn't overdraw. I didn't have a problem because I was tracking the money. Apparently no one in South Carolina was, and that's kind of the problem, because while the treasurer may not have been lying per se, that mistakenness still is a problem. And so you can argue the semantics. You can say, was he lying? Was he mistaken? How much did he know? But when it's your job to know, and when it's not even just, the $30, $50 overdraft fee on the line like it would have been for me, but it's millions of dollars of taxpayer money.
And talking about the state's credit rating.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. And so this led to a place where, well, did you invest the money? Have you not invested the money in long-term bonds, which is the responsibility of the treasurer? He is the one who is responsible for the state's money.
Yeah.
And apparently, from the hearing that took place on Thursday, that didn't happen. And what it looked like didn't. And they're calling his feet, as you said, they're putting his feet to the fire, and they're calling him out on this. And so the real question is, what is the Senate going to do about this? We expect to have some level of a report from them soon.
And I would think we'll have another hearing, too. There was no decision on that the other day. Just to break down a roughly 4-hour hearing into about 45 seconds of confusion, Marcus, play that soundbite we have there.
You can go online tonight and try to find a parallel, try to find some other place that's done this. Nobody has been so foolish as to do this. And it's going to cost us all.
You seem to be lost, but you, out of all the 5.5 million people in the state, ought to be able to explain it better than anybody.
I did explain it.
You have not explained anything. What you have explained is that you don't know.
Part of the problem is I don't think you read half of the stuff you've given us.
I have.
Is my
read it.
problem. Because when I read it to you today, it was as if it was the first time you ever saw it.
I'm under oath and you're not. In fact, you have specific immunity. If you tell the boldest lie on the planet, there's nothing that can happen to you.
As Mr. Loftis's counsel sat nearby,
Jotting notes on a card and
Yeah.
handing them off.
cue
Yes.
cards.
Yeah.
That was the tone of the hearing. And we can kind of wrap this up now, this segment. That's what they've all been like. We haven't really learned much yet. We're trying. Everyone in that room is trying to some degree. But I think we're going to have to try again.
It's a circle of accusations with no point.
Yeah.
And that's going to leave us all with a question about, okay, this is funny money. We didn't make any money off of it. And we're spending a lot of time right now.
To figure it out. Time and money
to
figure it out.
And money to figure it out.
Yeah.
All right, speaking of money, school choice, let's move on to that subject.
But guess what? Those little kids over in Chester County can't get to York County to the private schools because I'm from Chester originally. And I know what we have down there versus where I live now in Rock Hill. If we don't have a busing mechanism, those kids can't get to the schools.
That too, the next chapter on the school voucher, school choice program, how to fund it, how are we going to do that? Does it affect the public school system? It is designed by those that support it. John King would not be one of them, it would seem.
True.
Yes.
It is designed or pitched to us as this will help families have a better role in choosing how their child will be educated. He made a point there. If my kid can't get to the private school, then it doesn't matter. But here we are. The Senate has now passed a plan funded by lottery money. The House has now passed a school choice plan funded by the general budget, taxpayer dollars, which we found out last year is not constitutional. So, boom, Senate and the House are about to square off over this one.
The way they'll take this is the Senate will put 3 members into a conference committee. The House will put 3 members into a conference committee. They'll go into a room, they'll close the door, and they'll beat up on each other for a while till they come up with a plan. The question, though, is will the plan be constitutional?
Correct.
Exactly. And that is an outstanding and ongoing question because twice this issue has gone up before the South Carolina Supreme Court. Twice the court has said, no, in fact, you may not use taxpayer dollars to fund school choice. The Senate was trying to find this workaround through lottery money. It was innovative. I don't know if it would work. The House has said, nope, too fast. That is not what we want to do. We don't know how this comes out. We don't know how it comes out in the court, but we know how it's come out before, and no dice. So there is a different makeup on the court now. It's possible that things could change simply because of which justices are in those seats, but without a major change, I think that this is going to be another trip up to the court and another kicking back down for another try.
Another swing and a miss.
Right, and it's the question about whether or not you use general funds, which the Constitution in South Carolina says you can't use general funds to be able to use it for private
private school.
education.
Yeah.
But lottery funds are often used for private education, or it goes to private sources
Scholarship.
for 4K as well as for college scholarships. Yet again, I think we're going to spend some time talking about this and a lot of time at the Supreme Court.
Over the next
Yes.
few weeks, and yes, within 6 to 8 months, possibly the Supreme Court. That brings us to our next topic, tort reform, liquor liability, if we move along to that. We have talked about this one at length as well. There is a growing movement from even outside the state of South Carolina saying that the effort right now to change the way lawsuits can be filed against a business, a bar, a restaurant for possibly a DUI case. Needs to be changed. But those that are now staunchly against and say, this isn't going to help anybody. So why is that the case? Because we have talked about why it's going to help people, but now we have legal scholars saying, no, it's not.
This really boils down to whether or not insurance companies are going to be called to the table. This bill that's out there right now has about 13 different sections in it. 4 of those sections deal with the liquor liability. The rest is what's going to happen within the insurance companies. Do they get to have their way? Insurance companies have gotten a lot of gimmies in this bill. It's twice as much as it is about the liquor liability part of this. And so this entire bill, there are 2 sides of this. The lawyers and the people who are suing because something has gone wrong versus insurance companies who are turning around and saying, listen, we can't pay for these. You're too much of a liability for us here. And what we've not heard from yet are the insurance companies. We haven't seen them showing up at the table yet for any part of the discussion, and that's concerning
such
for
a
a lot of
major
people.
part of it.
Well, and that's the whole point. Right.
Yeah, and we see similar issues, reticence from insurance companies in the healthcare arena as well, where they know that if they get involved, all of a sudden a bill that may even help them people are going to turn against it because there's such a dislike for many of these insurance companies who are really out for their bottom line. We know that it's about protecting both the victims and the small businesses. And that when you get insurance involved too much and you start requiring these exorbitant insurance fees, that things go downhill fast. We need to make sure that we're keeping things fair for everyone. And hear from these insurance companies.
And that's the place when you're watching at home, this is the thing that you're going to be seeing these ads coming up on television. You're going to see S244.
Yes.
That's the Senate bill that's out there right now. And so when you see those ads, there are a lot of different places. It's not just liquor liability. It's clean drinking water. It's so many different ways.
Malpractice issues
that are also going on. So you're going to be seeing these ads on television. And when you do, understand that that's what's going to be going on. And for the next, they expect 2 weeks.
In the Senate. And they will talk.
The Senate is going to be going back and forth on this. We'll have a lot more to say about that.
We sure will. Yeah. Next up on the agenda. Human trafficking is what we're, not that particular video there, but if we could drop that down. Human trafficking, we know it's a problem. It is a multi-billion-dollar illegal industry that preys on the young, the underaged, the compromised. It takes advantage of people. We have a problem in this state. We have a problem in every state with it. But there is a movement right now at the State House to tighten up enforcement, to make it more serious about these villains. I mean, there's not a better word for them that are out there taking advantage of young girls, young boys, people in less than desirable conditions.
Absolutely. You know, in South Carolina alone, human trafficking, sex trafficking is at a minimum a $250 to $500 million a year business, impacting thousands of lives every single day. And we saw those numbers, those maps at that hearing last week. This is an issue that we must address. It's a moral imperative because we know that we have to quench that demand, to cut off the demand to save these victims, many of whom were manipulated or coerced into this horrible trade as teens, even preteens, had no chance in life. And so it's about getting them out. One of the ways we do that is by cutting off that demand, by making it a felony to be that pimp or that buyer, because what we're talking about is a trade in human life. And it's rife with violence, with abuse. It is not what you think of on TV of someone standing on a corner willingly offering themselves for some money. It's the opposite of that. It is slavery, and we have an imperative to do everything that we can in our state to stop that.
Yeah. We've heard the Attorney General in the state call it many times modern day slavery.
It is, and the thing about it is a criminal industry. You have to think about it from this standpoint. It's got products, it's got buyers, it's got sellers, it's got an infrastructure system, its own money system, it's got recruitment, it's got retention, and unfortunately it also has disposal, and that disposal is of human beings. And that is why Senate Bill 235, Senator Josh Kimbrell out of Spartanburg has put that forward to make purchasing commercial sex or purchasing a prostitute a crime in South Carolina of a felony. That's a $1,000 fine, because right now it's a misdemeanor. It's a $200 fine. It costs
You're
more.
in and out, it's a citation.
Right, and that is it. And so this makes it a very much higher crime, and it's something that then law enforcement has more of an incentive to go after, because here's the thing about it, Brian. That happened in Texas, they raised it to a felony. North Carolina raised it to a felony. And what we're seeing and expecting is that human trafficking, just like it went from Texas into Oklahoma, we expect them to start drifting down into South Carolina right now, because it's a whole lot cheaper and it's not a felony if you get caught in South Carolina yet. So the Senate subcommittee had a hearing on that earlier this week, unanimously passed it through, and heard from victims of human trafficking, and their stories were horrific.
They are horrific. We have told those stories many a time here at Watch Fox News, and they are very difficult to hear. The people that tell them, though, the courage they have to step forward. This is going to be that one topic that we talk about on this particular show that no one's going to debate about.
Right.
It's something that everyone knows needs to happen. It has to happen. You have to clean this up.
And I think there are places too where there are other things that you've talked about before, where there are other opportunities to help people get out of the situation, and for those who have been in it to find some level of redemption.
Exactly. So there are ministries out there, resources. We also have next steps we can look at in the law to actually fund some of these resources. But for right now, we have to just take a look at what the emergency is, and that emergency is the people who are coming down south out of North Carolina. We have to end that first, and then start dealing with how we rescue people and get them rehabilitated and back into society.
This bill has seen some iteration over the last 10 years. It is now getting traction in the Senate. That expect it to get through. The real question is, will the House turn around and take it up and recognize the issue that's going on and actually do something about it, Brian?
It's time.
It's time.
It's time. The clock is ticking on this one. As you said, the industry moves more and more into our state. That's going to do it this week for getting you connected to the Capitol. We'll do it again next Sunday in South Carolina.